Viruses have always lived alongside us. They've killed many millions of us. Despite their enormous power to cause disease, they're dependent on us. Invisible and deceitful, viruses are microscopic parasites. Without a host, they can't reproduce. As scientists discover the chemical rules by which a virus plays, they can control how a virus affects us. Long ago, virus was the name for snake venom, from the Latin for a slimy liquid poison. Today we also use the word to describe a certain kind of computer software. It makes sense. A software virus can poison healthy software. Biological viruses were discovered about 100 years ago. The invention of the electron microscope made them visible. Bacteria, much larger microorganisms, were seen 300 years earlier by the light microscope. Viruses are the smallest living entities which can reproduce. Here's a way to imagine them. If a virus were the size of a basketball, a bacteria would be the size of a city block. A grain of sand would be 2 miles long, and a person would be 4,000 miles tall. Tiny but lethal, viruses have changed human history. In 1918, a worldwide influenza epidemic killed more than 20 million people within a few months. In the 16th century, Cortez and 600 soldiers invaded Mexico on horseback. The native Aztecs had never seen horses. Cortez also brought something the Aztecs couldn't see: smallpox, measles, and influenza viruses. Structural biology is a branch of science fighting the war on viruses. Understanding how a virus lives and multiplies is the key to solutions that stop the chemical process the virus uses. Antiviral agents are one of the weapons in this war. Just as a bacteria in an infected cell absorbs antibiotics and dies, an antiviral agent is absorbed into the infected host cell. There it destroys a unique chemical the virus needs. The virus is disabled. Vaccines are a second antiviral weapon. A vaccine introduced into the body gives it a clue about its attacker. Now the body can successfully fight the virus because it knows its chemical name. Smallpox no longer exists because of a vaccine. More than 10 human vaccines have been created. Researchers are working to create vaccines for 2 of today's deadliest viruses, HIV and Rota. Rotavirus causes the dysentery that kills millions of children in underdeveloped countries. The relentless quality of these viral parasites is also an opportunity. Scientists are looking for ways to use viruses to deliver genetic fixes to cancer cells and to brain cells damaged by Alzheimer's. Virologists have identified about 4,000 viruses. Viruses are different from bacteria, fungi, algae, plants, and animals, but viruses are parasites to all of them. To copy themselves and grow, they must first infect and hijack a cell. It's their structure that makes it possible for them to steal the life from a cell and use it. Though mostly genetic material, viruses usually have other chemicals such as sugars, fats, and proteins. Of the identified viruses, more than 1,000 infect people. Looking closely at one of them, human herpes virus, reveals a lot about how all viruses work. With an advanced electron microscope, researchers can see this relatively large and complex virus as acutely as a CAT scan sees the body in 3 dimensions. There are more than 100 herpes viruses, 8 that infect humans. From the Greek, herpes means to creep, to crawl. Hippocrates, who founded modern medical practice, noted the creeping lesions in his records thousands of years ago. Most people have herpes virus and don't know it. Chickenpox, which is human herpes virus 3, infects 97% of Americans. It can recur later in life, and it's called shingles. Mononucleosis is caused by human herpes virus 4. Cold sores are caused by herpes viruses 1 and 2. More than 80% of Americans have herpes virus 1, and somewhere between 20% to 60% of Americans have herpes virus 2. The human herpes viruses are transmitted by touching, kissing, sex, and bodily fluids. None is airborne. With the electron microscope, the 4 parts of the cold sore virus, herpes virus 1, are visible. When it has a chance to invade a healthy cell, the virus behaves like the Trojan horse. Its sticky outer shell of proteins, fats, and sugars tricks the cell so the cell absorbs the virus. But once inside, the virus breaks apart and its genetic poison attacks the cell's nucleus. The virus's DNA reprograms the cell's DNA. The cell's new job is to make 100,000 copies of the virus. When its work is done, the cell dies. Sometimes the virus takes a different path. Instead of reproducing, it will hide in the cell's DNA, waiting, often decades, to begin its takeover. This is why you can have chickenpox at 6 and shingles at 60. Acyclovir was one of the first antiviral agents, and it's prescribed to combat human herpes viruses 1, 2, and 3. Like smallpox, herpes will become a disease of the past. Directed by the National Institutes of Health, medical researchers aggressively work to understand and control the biochemistry of viruses. They know pursuing and eradicating them will end much disease and human suffering.